Alright, want some cocaine? Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate coming at you to review a movie that I just recently bought at Half Price Books for $3. This is a movie that I've seen, for years and years and years and years, ever since it came out on video, which I imagine would have been 87 or 88 or something like that. I kept seeing this cover in video stores just for years. I mean, years and years and years and years. And it's just like I never knew what the hell this movie was about. I remember thinking that this chick was pretty sexy looking in the cover, and I just found it at Half Price Books within the last week, and I'm like, let's just get this damn thing after wondering for decades what the hell it's about and see this thing. And it just so happens that it does take place around Christmas, and obviously it being that time of year and me being, just one of the many, I guess to some extent, programmed individuals, it's that time of year, and I kind of generally like to review some movies, Christmas movies if you will, or movies that take place around Christmas this time of year or whatever. So I'm coming at you to review Less Than Zero. So the trailer says this movie was some kind of, I don't know, best-selling novel or some kind of crap before, and it's that whole thing where a best-selling novel made into a major motion picture crap, and it's just like I can't imagine how this was ever some kind of, good, highly selling novel or whatever, because I found the movie to be particularly just uninteresting, basically. And it stars back in the day when Andrew McCarthy was a big name, and this Jamie Gertz, who was really kind of sexy chick who I think had already been in The Lost Boys at this time, and then of course Robert Downey Jr. back in his classic 80s Robert Downey Jr. ness, if you will. I found the movie to be, I guess well done in the sense that it does what it does well or whatever, and the performances to be rather strong, and just, obviously being like, what, this movie, I think if I'm not mistaken, is 30 years old this year, and having watched this movie, I was very much aware of how it obviously fantastically captures the 80s and the fashions and stuff like that. Even though it came out in 87, it's obviously pretty easy bet that it was filmed in 86, so this has got the very much so mid-80s vibe and all the classic mid-80s kind of music. And it should be noted that this is, the music supervisor in this was, I can't remember what the hell his name is, but he's a big record producer who did a lot of records and stuff like that. So I mean, it's got that kind of, basically it's full of 80s, hits at the time and all this kind of music. 80s music at the time. So the best thing about this movie is basically just seeing, Andrew McCarthy, if that's a good thing, and obviously Jamie Gertz, and just a very young Robert Downey Jr., and just kind of the 80s fashions and music and stuff like that. I was just very disappointed in what this movie is. Basically, it starts the movie at the graduation with these three characters, which are, I think Andrew McCarthy and this Jamie Gertz or whatever are like boyfriend, girlfriend at the beginning of the movie, and then Robert Downey Jr. is just kind of, they're all like three friends, and he's just the third, friend or whatever. And then Andrew McCarthy, basically, we find in kind of whatever flashback scenes or whatever, they live in California, and Andrew McCarthy's character would go off to college in, the East Coast or whatever, and then would come back at some point to see basically, his girlfriend and Robert Downey Jr. in bed or something like that. So that kind of split the three of them up for a while. And then I think this movie, I can't remember, I think he's coming back like 6 months later. So he's coming back for Christmas or whatever. I think he got a phone call or has been getting letters or calls from his former girlfriend, and he's kind of like excited about the prospect of getting back together with her, who wouldn't be, because she's pretty attractive with what I probably would guess as being natural, rather, on the larger side, natural breastage or whatever. So obviously I can understand, why he'd be excited about the potential of getting back together with her, even though she horribly cheated on him with Robert Downey Jr. So he comes back to, the LA in around Christmas time, only to find out that basically in the last 6 months or so, or 9 months or whatever, basically they've both got in, both of his ex-girlfriend and Robert Downey Jr.'s character has just gone to hell, and just hell in a handbasket, if you will, and just gotten into drugs mostly, and just partying and wasting their lives away. I mean, not that him going to college in the East Coast isn't wasting his life, But you know, I guess them using drugs and stuff like that and just fucking up their bodies and shit and is a waste of life in my opinion. So he comes back to find not that not that his former girlfriend wants to see him so much as she wants him to help Robert Downey Jr.'s character. I wish I knew his name so I didn't have to keep saying Robert Downey Jr.'s character, but I can't remember it, so that's what I'm going to be saying. And that's just kind of what the whole movie is, basically. The tug of war between, trying to, these two characters that were formerly dating, trying to rehabilitate Robert Downey Jr.'s character. And this movie also stars, it seems like at this time, in the mid to late 80s, any movie that Andrew McCarthy was in, this other guy who would end up being the voice of Ultron and is that the name? Ultron in the second Avengers movie. I can't remember his name right now. I'll probably put it on the screen in red letters. Is also featured in this movie. He was also in Mannequin, if memory serves, and that was a movie I think starring Andrew McCarthy. So basically he plays I think if I'm understanding this correctly, like the drug dealer or something like that. This younger. I mean, not. I think he's older than the characters in this movie. I think, but. This drug dealer who basically has hooked Robert Downey Jr. and it's his dealer, and I can't remember why Robert Downey Jr. owes him. I think it's $50,000. I guess maybe just loaning him drugs or whatever. This is probably what drug dealers do to get people on the dole or whatever, get them in debt so then they can become sex slaves, which is kind of what happens to Robert Downey Jr. in this movie. And it's just like, oh God. So this whole movie, like 90 minutes worth, is basically just about the struggle of these two characters, former boyfriend, girlfriend. Andrew McCarthy was, I don't know, is it Gammy Gertz? I don't know, Jamie, I don't know how she pronounces that, but basically trying to rehabilitate Robert Downey Jr. and his dad. Robert Downey Jr.'s character is his dad being fed up with all his shenanigans and understandably so. Refuses to help him or let him live there with him. And it should be said that all these characters come from just affluent kind of rich homes and stuff like that. And it's just like, that's one of the cool things about this movie is being able to see affluent or rich kind of, California lifestyle in the 80s or whatever, and to get a glimpse into what they were, doing and stuff. And if this is, a true account of what was going on in that time with, rich people, I can kind of clearly, or I can definitively say I don't think we're missing much, because it's just like a bunch of just going to loud, noisy, crowded places and sniffing cocaine in the bathroom and stuff. So, I will say that this movie very fantastically captures that 80s, high society feel, if you will, and these parties that these kids continually go to, or parties / clubs or whatever, are, really done well and whatever, and look real and whatever. So, I mean, I guess that's pretty much all I have to say about Less Than Zero. I don't understand what the title means. I mean, Robert Downey Jr.'s character is definitely not, definitely worth less than zero, so maybe that's what the title means. I don't know. I don't think they say in the movie what the title means or whatever, but that's the whole thing of this movie. I mean, their inability, it's just the struggle of, and I just kept watching the movie, rolling my eyes, going like, why, Robert Downey Jr. will show up on their doorstep, and throughout the course of the movie, obviously, the main two characters, the guy and girl, kind of get back together in this, they have a couple sex scenes which are completely not even sexy because they're completely both wearing clothes, and even when she's on top of them in that one sex scene, she's wearing half a jacket, and it's just like, how are these sex scenes supposed to be all hot if they're wearing clothes, but whatever. So during the course of the movie, these two, former couples or former boyfriend, girlfriend kind of get back together, and, at the same time, every now and then Robert Downey Jr. will show up and I need help, and then he goes away, and it's just gets into more trouble with the drug dealer guy who ends up, Robert Downey Jr. is trying to make this club or something like that, and he borrows some money from his uncle or something. That falls through, and he ends up, having to basically pimp himself out and perform, be a sex slave for this guy who was Ultron, the voice of Ultron. So I mean, it's just very depressing, very annoying, and you really, like I was saying earlier, you roll your the more this movie goes on, and Robert Downey Jr. shows up needing help or whatever, rejecting any help that they want to do, you just roll your eyes, thinking, why are they wasting their time with this guy? I mean, I can understand maybe once or twice having him fuck up once or twice, but I mean, you know, after a while, like someone really, in my opinion, isn't even worth it anymore, and if they're not even gonna, you know, try, or if they keep lying and just being shady and just whatever, just self-destructive, just you got to cut them loose and just let them die or whatever, which unfortunately or ultimately is what ends up happening in Robert Downey Jr.'s character at the end of this movie, where he's just, you know, they're taking him away, finally just driving him out of freaking California or LA or whatever, and they're just gonna get him away from all this bad influence crap, and he's just like in the car, and you know, all three of them are driving away, and then he's just drops dead in the car. And it's just like, I asked myself when this movie was over, who the hell greenlit this and why did they do it? Like, there's so many movies where I watch that are like this, where I'm just like, who's looked at this script and said, oh, this is great, you know, this is something we have to spend millions and millions of dollars on and waste, you know, hundreds of people's time making this thing, only to just be like 90 minutes of just nonsensical whatever, just partying and sniffing cocaine and doing whatever that drug is, where he's, you know, torches the thing and smokes it. If that, I'm not a drug enthusiast, so I don't know what that is, but crack cocaine or heroin or whatever the hell he's doing in this movie. And it's just like, and at the end of the movie, the addict can die, and then that'll be the end of the movie. But it'll be a happy ending because the new couple, or the former, you know, couple, is now together again. But 1 star, for some reason I will still give this movie 1 star out of 4 stars, I guess just because of, it does pull off the 80s, well, since it was made in the 80s, it, you know, it does it very well because that's what the time it was made. Not very difficult for a movie to pull off the time, the era that it was made in, I guess. But I guess just being 30 years later now, it's just, I don't know, I guess it just, the more years that pass, the more it's just kind of cool in a retro way to see a movie from that particular year or whatever. And you know, the performance, you know, seeing these young faces from an era gone by is kind of cool. And like I say, this guy Andrew McCarthy was kind of big for a while, and it just dropped off the radar, just, you know. And so just, I guess the 80s is, you know, and the whatever party scenes, or just seeing Robert Downey Jr. in the classic 80s-ness of it is kind of why I gave it 1 star. And just, you know, even though she doesn't show herself naked or whatever, the chick in this movie is kind of sexy or whatever. So I guess that does it for my review for less than 0. I mean, shoot, you know, that's kind of the amount of stars it deserves. But like I say, I will give it 1 star just for its whateverness, you know, just insight into the, you know, lifestyles of the rich and just deplorable or whatever. So thank you very much for watching this review, and as always, we'll catch you on the next one.